After my father disowned me for my choices, he showed up at my door years later. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. The man who once told me I was dead to him is standing in my doorway, clutching the peeling frame like it's the only thing holding him up. "Noah," he says, voice raspier than I remember, "please. I have nowhere else to go." For a second my brain glitches, like I've opened the wrong door in the wrong life. Then the old anger rushes in, hot and familiar, like I'm 22 again and standing in his marble foyer with a backpack and shaking hands. This is my tiny one-bedroom apartment, the place I built out of nothing but second-hand furniture and paychecks from a job he mocked. The hallway smells like someone's overcooked dinner. My sneakers are kicked off by the mat. There's a plant in the window that somehow hasn't died on me yet. My EMT jacket hangs crooked on a hook, fluorescent stripes catching the weak light. Everything here is mine because I clawed it into existence after Gregory decided I wasn't worth keeping. "Why are you here?" I manage. My voice comes out flat, not nearly as shaken as I feel. He looks smaller, like someone let the air out of his expensive suit. His hair is thinner, the edges of his jaw softer. But the eyes are the same, assessing, calculating, already scanning my place like he's adding it to a list, like even my chipped mugs are inventory. "I just need to talk," he says. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." His hand trembles on the doorframe. I notice the hospital bracelet still wrapped around his wrist, the crumpled stack of envelopes tucked under his arm. None of this fits the Gregory the first remember, the man who cared more about his reflection than his children, who told me love was conditional on obedience. Behind him, the hallway is quiet. No witnesses. No Emma to mediate. No Aunt Rosa to bark sense into either of us. Just my father, the man who told me I was no longer his child, now begging like a stranger who took a wrong turn. I should slam the door in his face, but instead I hear myself asking the one question that will change everything. "What did you do, Dad, and why did you come to me?" People assume being disowned is a single moment, a dramatic explosion you can circle on a calendar. With my father, it was more like a long, controlled burn that finally found a gas line. Growing up, Gregory ran our house like a company he'd taken public. There were quarterly expectations, straight A's, varsity sports, perfect church attendance, polite smiles that didn't show too many teeth. Feelings were like unnecessary expenses, cut as soon as they appeared on the report, written off as weakness. When I was 10, he told me, "You're a Gregory man, Noah. We don't quit, we don't cry, and we sure as hell don't embarrass the family." I remember nodding even though my throat hurt, knuckles still scraped from being pushed on the playground for not laughing at some joke about sissies. I learned early that who I was and who he wanted didn't line up neatly, like clothes that never quite fit right no matter how you tugged. By high school, the cracks were obvious. I liked theater and first aid training more than football. I had a crush on a boy in my chemistry class and a playlist full of songs about leaving. Mom pretended not to notice, orbiting between us, smoothing Gregory's sharp edges until she wore herself thin. Emma, 3 years older and always more obedient, learned to translate his moods into warnings for me. "Don't mention college yet. Wear the tie he bought. Just don't talk about dating tonight, okay?" The night everything finally blew up, I was 22 and stupid enough to believe we could have a calm conversation. I told him I wasn't going into finance, that I'd been accepted into the EMT program, that I was moving in with my boyfriend, Matt. I can still see the way his face emptied out, like someone erased him and left only anger. "You think I'm going to support this lifestyle?" he hissed, voice low but deadly. "You are no son of mine if you walk out that door with that man." I remember the doorknob cold in my hand as he added one last sentence that still echoes when I try to sleep. "When you leave tonight, Noah, consider every part of me permanently gone." I left anyway. Not in some triumphant movie moment, just a shaky stumble out the door with a backpack, a duffel bag, and Matt's beat-up Civic idling in the driveway. Mom stood in the kitchen doorway, fingers pressed to her lips like she could hold the words in. Emma hovered behind her, eyes glossy, phone clenched in her hand as if she'd already chosen who she needed to keep texting. Gregory didn't follow me outside. He just stood in the foyer, arms crossed over his chest, watching like a disappointed CEO. When I glanced back one last time, he turned away deliberately, the universal signal for "you're dismissed." That hurt more than if he'd slammed the door. The first year after that was a blur of almosts and not quites. Almost enough money for rent, not quite enough for groceries. Almost enough energy to study after back-to-back shifts, not quite enough to stop crying in the shower some nights. Matt and I lasted 6 months before the pressure cracked us. He wanted someone less haunted. I wanted someone who didn't flinch every time my phone lit up with Emma's name. Friends who promised couches started making excuses. My roommate's weird about guests. My landlord is strict. Things are just crazy right now. I bounced from spare rooms to sublets to a basement that smelled like mold and disappointment. Being cut off meant more than losing money. It meant losing the illusion that I had a safety net at all. The lowest point wasn't the night I ate crackers for dinner or when my car got towed outside the hospital. It was standing in the grocery store line, EMT textbooks in my bag, debit card declined 3 times while the guy behind me sighed loudly. I put back the milk, the cereal, the decent coffee, walked out with instant noodles and a knot of shame lodged under my ribs. That night, my phone buzzed with an unknown number and a voicemail that made my knees buckle. For a second I thought it might be a debt collector or Emma drunk calling, but the number didn't match anything saved in my contacts. It was Gregory's voice, cold and precise, saying he hoped I was learning. After that voicemail, silence settled in like another roommate, loud, invasive, impossible to ignore. I deleted his message without listening to the rest. If Gregory wanted me to learn, fine. I learned. I finished the EMT program by stitching together scholarships, double shifts, and the kind of stubbornness that looks a lot like spite. Years slid by, measured in 12-hour shifts and ambulance sirens instead of family holidays. Christmas became something I observed through other people's windows as we drove past decorated houses on the way to calls. I worked every major holiday because time and a half pay beat sitting alone in a room that smelled like instant noodles and cheap coffee. When coworkers asked about my family, I told them the truth in the shortest possible way. It's just me and an aunt I actually like. Emma kept in touch sporadically. She'd text me pictures of our parents' house at Thanksgiving, long tables, polished silverware, Gregory at the head carving turkey like a king. Sometimes she'd call from the guest bathroom, whispering that she wished I were there, that things were complicated, that Dad had his ways but meant well. I'd listen, say uh-huh a lot, and hang up feeling like someone had scraped old scars with a dull knife. On social media, Gregory's life looked perfect. New suits, charity galas, photos shaking hands with council members and business partners. Not a single post acknowledged that his son existed. I became a ghost in my own family story, the untagged gap between Emma and my mother in every picture. Aunt Rosa was the only one who refused to pretend. She'd invite me over for arroz con pollo and unfiltered opinions. "He'll come crawling one day," she'd say, wagging a spoon at me. "Men like your father always do when the show starts crumbling." I used to laugh that off, but standing in my doorway now, watching Gregory's hand tremble, her words roar back louder than any siren. I just never imagined the day he'd crawl would look like this. 5 minutes. I repeat, though we both know that's a lie. Nothing with Gregory has ever been just 5 minutes. Still, I step aside. Habit, maybe. Curiosity. Masochism. He limps past me, the subtle hitch in his step betraying something he clearly doesn't want to name. My apartment suddenly feels even smaller with him in it, like the walls are leaning in for a closer look. He glances at the second-hand couch, the mismatched mugs, the stack of folded uniforms on the chair. "So this is where you live," he says, not quite sneering, but dangerously close. "This is where I survive," I correct. "Want water or something? Or are you just here to critique my IKEA choices?" The corner of his mouth twitches, almost a smile, then dies. He lowers himself onto the couch with a soft grunt, the envelopes crinkling in his hands. Up close, the hospital bracelet is impossible to ignore. White plastic, black text, the faint imprint of his name. There's a yellowish bruise blooming along his jaw, and his knuckles are scraped like he's fought something, or someone, recently. "I'm sick," he says finally, staring at the blank TV screen instead of me. It's serious. The word hangs between us, heavy and unhelpful. I cross my arms, leaning against the wall. I'm an EMT, remember? We don't use serious. We use words like stage, prognosis, survival rate. Which one are you avoiding? He flinches. "Leukemia," he mutters. "Advanced." Treatments are expensive, complicated. He clears his throat. They said I'd need support. Family support. There it is. The ask slides into the room before he even finishes the sentence. Family support, from the person he erased. Outside, somewhere down the block, a siren starts wailing, growing louder as it approaches, like the universe mocking me with my own job. So you need a caregiver? I ask. A place to stay? Money? What exactly are you asking me for, Dad? He finally looks at me, really looks, and for a flicker of a second, I see something almost like fear. I need more than that, he says quietly. I need you to sign something that could change everything for both of us. He pulls one envelope from the stack like he's performing a magic trick no one asked for. The paper is creased and soft from being handled too much. When he hands it to me, his fingers brush mine, and I have to fight the instinct to jerk away. It's a legal document, dense print and blank signature lines. My name appears half a dozen times, each instance like a slap. I skim phrases: guarantor, responsibility for medical expenses, consent, primary contact. At the bottom, someone has left a sticky note. We strongly advise family discussion before signing. I let out a humorless laugh. Family discussion, I repeat. That's cute, considering you told the family I was dead to you. Noah, he warns, but the edge in his voice is duller than I remember. This isn't the time. It's literally the only time, I shoot back. You didn't call when I was sleeping in basements. You didn't call when Mom had her scare with her blood pressure. You called when you needed a signature. His jaw tightens. Your mother agreed that involving you then would make things worse, he says. She wanted peace. I study him. The hospital bracelet, the legal forms, the way he keeps touching his chest like something inside hurts. But there's something missing in his story, a gap big enough to drive an ambulance through. Where's Emma? I ask. Why isn't she signing this? He looks away, towards the plant on my windowsill. Emma's busy, he says. She has the kids, the house, her own life. It made sense to ask you. My phone buzzes on the counter, screen lighting up with a name I haven't seen in months, and my stomach drops so hard I almost laugh. For a moment, I imagine she's calling to warn me, to say, don't sign anything, Noah, the way she used to whisper, don't bring up college tonight. But Emma hasn't taken my side in a long time. These days, her loyalty is braided tightly around Dad's checkbook and the mortgage on her perfect little house. It's Emma calling, and I know instantly that whatever he's hiding, she already knows. I let the phone ring twice, 3 times, then answer on speaker, keeping my eyes on Gregory. Hey, I say, aiming for neutral. Noah. Emma's voice is pitched higher than usual, like she's forcing cheer through a narrow opening. Oh my God, he's there already, isn't he? I look at him. He stiffens. Yeah, I say slowly. He's here. You want to tell me why he needs my signature more than yours? There's a pause, and in that silence I hear everything Emma doesn't say. The clink of dishes in the background. A TV murmuring. Kids' voices at a distance. Her carefully constructed life humming along. It's complicated, she says finally. Look, can we talk later? Just don't be dramatic, okay? He's really sick. I'm not the one who waited 8 years to talk. I snap. If there's something I should know before I sign away my sanity, now would be the time. Noah, she whispers, and suddenly she sounds like the sister who used to sneak me snacks when I skipped dinner. Please don't fight with him. He can't handle stress right now. Just listen and try to be kind. For me. She hangs up before I can ask anything else. I stare at the screen until it goes dark, then set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. I told her not to bother you, Gregory says, rubbing his temples. This is between us. That's the first truthful thing you've said, I reply, because something about this arrangement reeks, and I'm not stepping into it blind. That night, after he leaves with a promise to give me time, I can't sleep. I sit at my kitchen table with the document spread out, my laptop open, my EMT bag still by the door from my last shift. Habit kicks in, the same instinct that makes me double-check vitals and rerun scenarios in my head after calls. I type his hospital number into the search bar, the clinic's name on the letterhead, the wording of the financial responsibility clause. It takes exactly 3 minutes of basic Googling to realize he's left out something huge. The clinic's website has a cheerful color scheme and a grim little tab labeled Financial Counseling. I click it and read about payment plans, guarantors, and what happens when patients don't qualify. One line snags my attention. In cases where the patient's assets are encumbered or inaccessible, family guarantors may be pursued for full remaining balances. Encumbered or inaccessible. I think of Gregory's house, the manicured lawn, the imported tiles in the foyer. Assets. The word sits poorly in my mouth. I close the laptop and grab my keys before I can talk myself out of it. Aunt Rosa answers the door in fuzzy slippers and an apron dusted with flour. Mi niño, she says, pulling me into a hug that squeezes the breath out of my chest. I was about to call you. My ears have been ringing like crazy. I sit at her small kitchen table while she pours coffee and slices cake. I slide the document across to her. She puts on her reading glasses, mouth tightening with each line. He has some nerve, she mutters. You know why he's asking you and not Emma, right? Because I'm the disposable one? I say. Because Emma's house is already tied up in the mess he made, she replies. He refinanced his own place years ago. Then he convinced Emma to do the same for some investment opportunity. It didn't go well. My stomach twists. How do you know that? She snorts. Your father thinks no one talks, but people love to gossip when rich men trip. There's a lawsuit, Noah. Something about a failed development and missing funds. The room tilts just slightly as another piece of the puzzle clicks into place. Rosa taps the paper with one red-painted nail. You sign this, she says, and you're not just helping with chemo bills. You're tying yourself to every bad decision he's hidden from you. Men like Gregory don't separate debts. They bundle them and hand them to whoever still cares enough to pick up the phone. I stare at the lines where my name waits, imagining numbers stacking on top of each other until they crush the life I finally built. If he collapses under this, he might be planning to drag me down with him. I call the number on the clinic's website the next morning between shifts, hands sweating so much I nearly drop my phone. After politely refusing to give medical details, the billing rep confirms what I already suspected. Gregory's insurance is a mess, his coverage limited, and there have been challenges with payment history. When I ask what happens if I sign as guarantor, she doesn't sugarcoat it. You would be legally responsible for any portion insurance doesn't cover, she says, including prior balances connected to this course of treatment. Prior. I repeat, as in already existing? Yes, sir, she says gently. I can't advise you what to do, but I would recommend you seek independent legal counsel before signing. Independent legal counsel turns out to be Attorney Malik, a name Aunt Rosa presses into my hand along with a Tupperware container of leftovers. His office is smaller than I expected, crammed with file boxes and diplomas. He listens quietly while I lay everything out. The disownment, the years of silence, the sudden reappearance with paperwork in hand. He reads the document twice, then sighs. Your father is not just asking for help with treatment, he says. He's positioning you as a shield. If there's a lawsuit, if creditors come after him, they may see you as part of his support structure, especially if he's moved assets or made transfers recently. My head throbs. Transfers? I ask. Like what? Real estate, bank accounts, anything large, he says. Has he asked to put anything in your name? I think of the envelopes I haven't opened yet, the way Gregory's eyes lingered on my address label by the door. Back home, I spread everything out on my table like evidence from a call, heart pounding as I line up dates, letterheads, and scribbled notes in his messy handwriting. The more I look, the more it feels less like treatment paperwork and more like an escape plan drafted in legalese. At the bottom, there's a deed giving me his house before trial. I stare at the deed until the lines blur. On paper, it looks like generosity, like a sick father trying to secure his son's future. But layered on top of everything else, the guarantor form, the lawsuit, the refinancing rumor, it feels like a grenade wrapped in a gift box. What would happen if I accepted the house? I ask Malik over the phone the next day. He doesn't hesitate. If a court decides those transfers were made to avoid paying legitimate debts, they can be reversed, he says. And if you sign as guarantor on top of that, you could find yourself responsible for large sums with little protection. So either I let him drown alone, I say slowly, or I climb into the boat with him while it's already sinking. That's one way to put it, he says. Legally, you don't owe him this. Morally, that's your question to answer. Emma's call comes that evening. This time I answer on the first ring. She doesn't bother with small talk. He told me you're making this difficult, she says. Noah, he's scared. He might actually die. People die every shift I work, I reply. Most of them didn't choose to torch their families first. She exhales sharply. You're punishing him, she says. Fine. But do you really want his last memory of you to be this? Cold. Legalistic? What I want, I say, voice shaking now, is to not lose the life I built just because he finally noticed I exist again. After we hang up, I drive to Aunt Rose's and sit at her table until the sun sinks behind the apartment buildings, turning the windows into rows of gold coins I'll never own. She listens without interrupting, then reaches across the table and takes my hand. You already lost him once, she says softly. Don't volunteer to lose yourself, too. Help if you can live with it. But if helping means disappearing again, that's not help, that's sacrifice. Her words settle in my chest like a weight and an anchor at the same time, rattling around with every memory of his hallway lectures and my basement nights. And I know I have to tell Gregory my answer. I decide to give him my answer where he least expects. I don't invite Gregory back to my apartment. Instead, I call him and say, if we're going to talk about signatures and houses, we're doing it somewhere official. There's a long pause, then a clipped, fine. Where? Attorney Malik's office, I say. Tomorrow at 3. Bring every document. Emma should come too. He hates it. I can hear it in the way he clicks his tongue, the old disapproval sharpened by fear, but he agrees. Emma has the kids, he says. She's busy. She can find a sitter, I reply. This is her life you're mortgaging too, whether she admits it or not. The next day, I arrive early. Malik's receptionist offers me water and a sympathetic smile. I pace, running through everything in my head like a scene I might have to narrate later on some late-night Reddit confession. Here's where he tried to use me as a financial life raft. Here's where I finally said no. Gregory shows up 5 minutes late, looking like he dressed in the dark. His tie is crooked, his collar wrinkled. For a man who curated his appearance like a stock portfolio, it's jarring. Emma trails behind him, cheeks flushed, hair pulled into a messy bun that would have earned a raised eyebrow at our childhood dinners. What is this, Noah? She whispers as we sit. An ambush. It's a conversation with someone who doesn't owe him anything. I say, so maybe we can finally hear the truth. Malik joins us, calm as ever, and asks Gregory to walk through every transfer, every form, every expectation he has of me. For the first time since he appeared at my door, my father looks genuinely cornered. His gaze flicks from Malik to me to Emma, calculating exits that don't exist. I just need help while I'm sick, he insists. I'm still your father. Then act like one, I say quietly. Start by telling us exactly how deep you are. Malik folds his hands, waiting, and I realize I've maneuvered Gregory into something rarer than illness or debt for him, a situation he can't control with charm alone. He opens his mouth, and what he finally admits makes Emma gasp. I moved some money, Gregory starts, picking invisible lint from his pants. Everyone does it. The market tanked, the project stalled, and I had to protect what I could for the family. Malik's eyebrows lift slightly. By moved, you mean? Gregory exhales through his nose. I shifted funds from the development accounts into personal ones. Short term. The investors overreacted, slapped the word fraud on everything. Now they're suing, and my lawyers say the court will scrutinize every transfer I've made in the last few years. Emma's hand flies to her mouth. Dad, she whispers. You told me it was just a misunderstanding. You said they were jealous. They are jealous, he snaps, then softens his tone. But they're also vindictive. That's why I put the house in Noah's name. They can't touch what doesn't legally belong to me. Malik clears his throat. That's not exactly how it works, he says. And the timing makes it look like you're hiding assets. If the court decides that, they can reverse the deed. They might even argue your son is complicit if he knew. The room spins a little. So your plan, I say slowly, was to make me your shield, and if it fails, your fall guy. Gregory's eyes flash. Noah, don't be dramatic. You're overreacting. I'm giving you something. It's a gesture. It's a trap, I cut in. You disowned me when my life didn't fit your script. Now you want to write me into the third act as your savior or your scapegoat, depending on what the judge says. He opens his mouth to argue, but Malik beats him to it. There's another issue, Malik says, flipping to a different page. This clause here mentions dependent beneficiaries. Mr. Gregory, have you recently added any new dependents or changed your will? Gregory flinches, just enough for me to see it. Emma's eyes narrow. Dad, she says slowly, what did you do? He hesitates, and in that hesitation, I feel my childhood tilt sideways again. Malik looks at me, then back at him, waiting for the kind of confession that doesn't fit into a neat signature line. When he finally speaks, the words he chooses rip our family story open. I updated my will, Gregory says at last, every word dragged over gravel. After you left, it didn't make sense to keep you on it if you weren't part of things. I snort. So I've been dead on paper too. Great. That's not all, Emma says, voice thin. He said beneficiaries, Dad. Plural. Who else is there? He looks anywhere but at us. The diploma on Malik's wall. The blinds. His own hands. There's a boy, he finally admits. Teenager. His mother and I, it was years ago. Before you moved out, Noah. Before you came out. He swallows. He needed help. I set up support. It was supposed to stay private. Emma's chair scrapes back like she's been shocked. You had another kid and kept it a secret? She chokes. You let me babysit charity galas while you were. What? Visiting your other son? Heat flushes my face. Not because he cheated, though that's a crater of its own, but because suddenly the math clicks. Dependent beneficiaries. Hidden support. Money moved quietly out of projects and into personal accounts. So the investors aren't just suing over a bad market. I say, they're suing because you siphon money to cover a second life. Gregory slams his hand on the armrest. You don't understand the pressure I was under, he snaps. Image, reputation, politics. What I understand, I say, standing, is that you chose your image over me once, and now you're trying to use me to patch the holes you punched in that same image. Malik clears his throat. Legally, Noah has no obligation to sign anything or accept the property, he says. In fact, from what I've seen, I strongly advise he decline and put that in writing. Emma turns to me, eyes red, mascara smudged in streaks she'd never allow if this were happening at one of Gregory's fundraisers. If you walk away, he could lose everything, she says. If you help, you could lose everything. What are you going to do? The question hangs there, terrible and honest, and for once everyone in the room is looking at me, not him, waiting to see who I decide to save. I inhale, steady my voice, and choose myself for the first time. I don't give him my answer in Malik's office. I wait until the documents are copied, until we walk out into the overcast parking lot that smells like exhaust and rain. Gregory leans heavily on his cane, Emma hovering as if she's afraid he'll crumble into dust on the asphalt. Noah, he starts, voice softer than I've ever heard it. Son, I hold up a hand. You don't get to use that word as leverage, I say. My heart is pounding so hard I can feel it in my teeth. Here's what's going to happen. I'm not signing as guarantor. I'm not keeping the house. Malik will send letters to that effect. You can fight your lawsuits with your own name on the line. His face spasms, somewhere between rage and panic. After everything I've built, he says hoarsely, you'd really just stand there and watch them tear it down? I think of basement apartments, declined debit cards, nights in the back of the ambulance with strangers whose families never showed up. You're the one who built it on a sinkhole, I answer. I won't jump in after you. Emma starts crying. What about his treatment? She pleads. He really is sick, Noah. I know. I say, throat tight. I'm not heartless. I'll drive him to appointments when I can. I'll answer the phone if the hospital calls. But I'm not sacrificing my financial life or my sanity to fix choices he still refuses to admit were wrong. It's not forgiveness. It's not revenge. It's a boundary drawn in permanent marker. In the weeks that follow, everything shifts in small, painful increments. Malik sends the letters. The clinic updates their files. I start therapy with a counselor Aunt Rose's friend recommends, someone who doesn't flinch when I say, my father disowned me, then tried to turn me into his financial insurance policy. We untangle guilt from responsibility, compassion from compliance. Gregory's world shrinks to hospital rooms, waiting areas, and whatever part of his house the court still allows him to claim. Mine expands, slowly, to include nights off that aren't spent catastrophizing and a future I can picture without his approval. The first time I ignore his late-night call, I finally sleep deeply. People online love neat endings. They want me to say Gregory saw the error of his ways, apologized in a sweeping monologue, and we hugged it out over hospital jello. Or they want me to say I cut him off completely, walked away without a backward glance. The truth, like most things, lives messily in between. I visit sometimes. I bring him practical things, lip balm, decent coffee, socks that don't itch. We talk about safe subjects, the weather, traffic, how Emma's kids are doing in school. He never quite says, "I'm sorry," for the night he told me I was no longer his child. I never quite say, "I forgive you for trying to use me as a shield." What we do instead is exist in the same room without pretending the past didn't happen. Therapy teaches me a new definition of honoring my parents. Not blind obedience, but refusing to pass their damage forward. I learned that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors I control. I can open them a crack to let small kindnesses through without letting the flood of obligation drown me again. If you're watching this because your own parent chose image over you, I'm not going to tell you there's one right path. Some people go no contact and breathe easier. Some stay and negotiate new rules. What I will tell you is this: you are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep someone else's reputation warm. Last month, I stood in my doorway again, morning light spilling over the EMT jacket on its hook, plant thriving in the window, Aunt Rosa texting me memes. I realized that for the first time, this place didn't feel like a hiding spot from my family. It felt like home I built with my own two hands. Gregory may never introduce me proudly as his son at a gala, but I introduce myself proudly every time I show up to a call and kneel beside a stranger's pain without judging who they are. If you're standing in your own metaphorical doorway, wondering whether to let someone back in, here's my advice. Protect your peace like it's property, and remember that no is a complete sentence even when your voice shakes. I chose my own threshold, and for once, I didn't apologize.